everyone, it's Mary with Happy Pine Soap. I am back after last week's horrible disaster. Feel free to check that video out if you haven't seen it yet. I had quite a humorous, it wasn't humorous at the time, but quite a humorous fail attempting to do the kiss pour design. I have a lovely recipe I've been using for a long time, and last week, abysmal disaster. It seized right up on me, and this week, thank goodness, it did behave itself. However, I didn't actually manage a kiss pour design in my soap. Somewhere in between maybe a drop swirl and a kiss pour. I'll let you be the judge. So feel free to hit that subscribe button. I do soaping tutorials every single week. And without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with the colors. Each mica will be 1/2 teaspoon to 1/2 tablespoon lightweight oil. For the micas, we have Gold Sparkle. This one's from Brambleberry. Mad Mica's Pow Pow Purple, as well as Sakura, one of my favorite light pinks. We also have some neons from Mad Micas in Grape Ape and another neon in Blue Shocker. These hold their color really well. This time I went with a fragrance from Midwest Fragrance, Cedar Musk and Lavender. I added some extra lavender essential oil as well and blended this with kale and clay. And then for the black color, I blended about 6 tablespoons of lightweight oil with 3 tablespoons of charcoal. I soaped at lower temperatures this week. The oils were at about 98 degrees and the lye was room temperature at 71 degrees. The lye solution was put through a stainless steel mesh strainer. Go ahead and burp the stick blender. You don't want to trap any air in your soap. And then I stick blended this for approximately 30 seconds. In about 10-second bursts each time. Now I'm adding the fragrance with the kale and clay blended into it. This time the fragrance, compared to last week, behaved beautifully. My batter did not accelerate or seize, thank goodness. Now I'm adding the charcoal. I split my batch into 3 pounds for the main dark black color. And then the remaining 2 pounds of the soap batter will be split into 1/2 pound each for the 4 colors. And then I had about 4 ounces left over that I used for the gold. Now you see me adding my micas into the 8 ounces of soap batter. Each one of these pour containers has 8 ounces of soap. And just stirring them gently. Again, compared to last time, the batter remained super fluid, as you see here, as it was supposed to last week and did not. Fragrances can be a tricky thing. Even if they say they don't accelerate, you find sometimes that they do. They absolutely do. But this week, it behaved itself so well. And now I'm getting ready to essentially pour in some of the colors. Unfortunately, my batter was so fluid that instead of it kind of resting on top, which is what I wanted it to do for the kiss pour, it sank to the bottom of the batter. So this is more like a drop swirl at this point because the batter is super fluid. If I had wanted to, and maybe next time when I try it, I will wait until the batter sets up a little bit, maybe more to, I wouldn't say a medium trace, but almost there, so that your colors will sit at the top of the main color instead of sink to the bottom. I think that's the ticket for getting the kiss pour to be successful, is you really don't want the batter sinking, unfortunately. All right, for the kiss pour, when it's done right, the design looks totally different than my finished design, but the idea is that you have your 2 pour containers with the colors that you would like to use, and you gently touch the 2 pour containers as you see me doing here, kind of like a kiss. And as you pour the batter together, the two are supposed to essentially flow and blend into one another, creating some really beautiful, intricate, wavy lines. But as we see, my batter stayed way too fluid, and that unfortunately did not happen. At this point, I was pretty sure I was not going to get a pretty kiss pour as I had wanted, but you know what? With soaping, you just soldier on because at this point, you don't really have a choice. So I just completed the colors as best as I could and kept pouring in hopes that maybe the finished design would still be pretty. Okay, I'm getting to the last little bit of colors in the separate pour containers. So I'm getting ready to pour all of them into the charcoal colored pour containers and using a little bit to put over the top just to try to make the design on top a little bit pretty. I use the gold right at the end to also create a nice top, which you'll see here in just a moment. And the tricky thing about this recipe, I really love it. It's one of my own. I created it several months ago, if not maybe half a year ago. This is a soap recipe that remains incredibly fluid for about 30-40 minutes. As you see, the soap is still incredibly fluid, and this is probably a good 20 or so minutes into me pouring. Now, granted, it's a little too fluid, so I would probably have to leave the soap containers out for half hour or so if I really wanted to do a kiss pour here and have it to look correct. But this soap recipe is amazing as well because these bars are super hard, and this recipe is oftentimes ready to cut in about 8 hours, although I left the soap overnight in this case. But it's just a fabulous recipe. You can do so much with it. So I encourage all of you to get familiar with soap calc and get familiar with creating your own soap recipes. There's a lot of good advice out there on YouTube and on the web. And I also may eventually do a video on how to create a soap recipe. So if you would like me to do that, feel free to drop a comment below. I can also show you how to use soap calc if some of you are not familiar with that. That's a very important tool that soapers need to be familiar with. So yeah, if any of those things interest you, feel free to drop comments below. I'll be happy to create some videos if you guys think it would be helpful for you. Another thing I really love about this recipe is that I created it to prevent soda ash as well. Soda ash is that white film on top of your soaps that sometimes happens in the first few days or so after soaping and letting them cure. It is harmless, although kind of an annoying cosmetic problem for some of us, especially with these more intricate designs. So this soap recipe actually has the top water discount that you can do in soap. It is a 50% lye solution. So that is another reason why the bars firm up so fast, is because they have a lot less water in them than another soap recipe. So pretty amazing to get this fluid of a recipe with the top amount of water discount possible for soaping. So yeah, you can see why I returned to using this soap recipe repeatedly. Okay, we're now to the part where I'm adding the gold mica mixed in with the 4 ounces of soap batter right at the very top. I'm going to do a swirl design. And again, I decided to do this at the last minute because the kiss pour was not really behaving itself. And so I wanted it to at least look pretty on the top. Although I had no idea that when I would cut it in just a little bit, that it would actually look like an amazing galaxy. So that was a nice surprise. To do your swirl, you can use a simple tool like this one. I believe this is the cleanup tool that's sold on Brambleberry. And I just used some figure eights that I did in the tops of the soap, just really probably the top 1/4 inch of the soap, no more. I like to oven process my soap. Basically, you will put this in a warm oven. You essentially preheat your oven to 170 degrees. Go ahead and turn it off. Put the soap in, leave it for several hours, or you can leave it overnight. Some people do, but I take mine out in about 3 hours and let it rest on the counter till it's nice and cool. Now we're ready to unmold the soap. This is approximately 5 pounds here. And you know your soap is ready to be unmolded when it doesn't stick to the sides of your mold as you gently pull it away. Also, if you gently push your finger into the side of the mold, you shouldn't feel the soap press inward. So my soap met both of those requirements. In fact, it was getting pretty hard already, so I needed to get it out and start getting it cut before it got too firm to cut. You don't want to break your wire cutters. This is the Caterpillar soap cutting station from Custom Craft Tools. Each one is made by hand and they're phenomenal soap cutting tools. Essentially, I am splitting my soap in half. So essentially, I measured the width of my rectangle of soap and splitting the width down the middle, basically. Next, I measured a little over 2 inches, and essentially I'm now going to split this soap into smaller chunks, which I will then cut into individual soaps. So that's what you see me doing here on my simple wire cutter. I believe this soap cutter is from Amazon. And you can definitely see the drop swirl emerging here as I cut it vertically. So I had to make a choice here whether I continue to cut vertically or if I use these approximately 2-inch chunks and cut them in half again, but horizontally. And so that's what I decided to do. I decided to be brave and continue to cut them in hopes that maybe the design would improve. It really depends on how you cut your soap. So that goes to show how important the angle and the placement when we cut. It makes a big difference in the soap design. As I continued cutting, it was definitely showing me more and more of the actual color, which I was at least happy to see. I was afraid I wasn't going to see much of any color really inside the charcoal part, but I am actually getting quite a bit of color, so I was quite excited about that. Okay, now what you see me doing here is essentially turning each one of the 2-inch chunks on their sides and cutting them in half. This was definitely a leap of faith as I did not know it was going to look good at all. And I was so surprised when I saw these galaxy-like swirls begin to emerge from the charcoal soap. I was really pleased. It started to feel like a Bob Ross moment here where there's no accidents or no mistakes. There's only happy accidents. That's what he says. So that was pretty cool. I was very pleased when I started seeing the space-like designs showing up. This one is by far one of my favorites out of all of the bars that I cut. It almost reminds me of like a falling nebula or something. Ah, it's just so cool. I love the movement in the swirls as well. And here I wanted to show you just what the vertical cut would look like instead of the horizontal cut. This is from the top down, and that pretty much is your drop swirl. And my final step is beveling my bars. I like to bevel them because it takes away kind of the sharpness to those cuts. When it hardens, fully cures, the hardness of the edges can actually be a little off-putting in your hands as you're using it. So beveling is really nice because it makes it feel really smooth in your hands too as you use it. And this is a vegetable peeler from IKEA, if anybody would like to know. This one really reminds me of outer space, even when you tilt the bar sideways, kind of like galaxies in the dark void of space. It's so cool how the design continues on the side. It's one of my favorite things about soap. It's like 3D art instead of 2D. And here I have put a bunch of them all together so that you could get a feel for the differences in each bar. I really love it, actually. This was, again, a happy accident. I did not set out to make galaxy soap, but you know what? Sometimes soap is full of surprises, but it's always fun, and I really hope you enjoyed my video. Feel free to drop any comments or suggestions below, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next soapy tutorial. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.